The old clock on the wall showed 3:15 a.m. as Dr. Richard Hayes pulled into the empty parking lot of Harvard University. The night was cold and quiet. Most people were sleeping in their warm beds, but Richard was wide awake. He had been tossing and turning for hours, thinking about the important research papers he had left in his office. Richard was 52 years old and had worked at Harvard for over 20 years. He was the director of the mathematics department, which meant he was in charge of all the math teachers and students. People respected him because he was very smart and kind to everyone. He had gray hair and wore glasses that made him look like a wise professor from the movies. Tonight was different from other nights. Richard had been working on a very important math problem for months. The solution was so close he could almost touch it. But when he got home earlier that evening, he realized he had forgotten his research notes in his office. Without those notes, he could not finish his work. That is why he was driving back to the university at such a late hour. The campus looked strange at night. During the day, it was full of students walking around, talking and laughing. Now it was empty and quiet like a ghost town. The old brick building stood tall and dark against the night sky. Only a few streetlights lit up the walking paths between the buildings. Richard parked his car and walked toward the Jefferson building where his office was located. His footsteps echoed on the empty sidewalk. The sound seemed louder than normal in the quiet night. He pulled his coat tighter around himself as the cold wind blew through the trees. As he reached for his keys to unlock the main door, something caught his eye. There was a light coming from one of the windows on the second floor. Richard stopped and looked up at the building. The light was coming from classroom 204, which was used for advanced math classes during the day. Richard thought this was strange. Who would be in a classroom at this time of night? Maybe it was a security guard doing his rounds, or perhaps a janitor was cleaning the room. But the light seemed too bright for cleaning, and it was not moving around like someone walking with a flashlight. Richard decided to check what was going on before going to his office. He unlocked the main door and stepped inside the building. The hallway was dark except for the emergency lights that stayed on all night. His footsteps echoed even louder now as he walked on the hard floor. As he climbed the stairs to the second floor, Richard could hear a faint sound. It was not talking or music. It sounded like someone writing on a board. The sound got louder as he got closer to classroom 204. Richard walked slowly down the hallway toward the classroom. The light under the door was getting brighter. He could definitely hear someone writing and erasing things on the whiteboard. Sometimes he heard a quiet voice, like someone talking to themselves. When Richard reached the classroom door, he stopped and listened carefully. The voice was soft and belonged to a young woman. She was saying numbers and math words that Richard recognized. But she was not just reading from a book. She was solving difficult math problems out loud. Richard was curious now. He knew that. His advanced students sometimes stayed late to study, but 3 a.m. was very unusual. Also, the problems he was hearing sounded much harder than what his regular students were learning. Very quietly, Richard moved closer to the door and looked through the small window. What he saw made his eyes grow wide with surprise. A young woman with long blonde hair was standing at the whiteboard. She looked to be about 19 or 20 years old. She was wearing simple clothes, jeans and a plain sweater that looked old and worn. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had a pencil behind her ear. But what surprised Richard the most was what she was writing on the board. The equations were very advanced, the kind that only graduate students and professors could understand. These were not the simple math problems that most college students worked on. These were complex differential equations that even some of his PhD students found difficult. The young woman worked quickly and confidently. Her hand moved across the board like she had done this thousands of times before. She would write a few lines, step back to look at her work, then continue. Sometimes she would erase something and try a different approach. But she never looked confused or stuck like most students did with hard problems. Richard watched as she solved a problem that he had given to his graduate seminar class just last week. It had taken his best students over an hour to solve it, and some never got the right answer. But this young woman was working through it like it was easy homework. She finished the first problem and immediately started on another one. This problem was even harder. Richard remembered spending an entire afternoon on a similar problem when he was working on his PhD many years ago. But the young woman seemed to understand it perfectly. Richard stood in the hallway for almost 20 minutes watching her work. He was amazed by what he was seeing. In all his years of teaching, he had never seen a student work at this level with such confidence and skill. Most students struggled with basic calculus, but this young woman was solving graduate-level problems like they were simple puzzles. The young woman took a step back from the board and looked at her work. She had solved 3 very difficult problems, perfectly. Richard could see that all her answers were correct. Her methods were not just right, they were elegant and creative in ways that impressed him. Richard realized he was witnessing something very special. This was not just a smart student doing homework. This was someone with real mathematical talent, the kind that appears only once in a while. He had seen many bright students over the years, but this was different. This young woman had a natural understanding of mathematics that could not be taught in any classroom. But who was she? Richard did not recognize her from any of his classes. He knew all his graduate students well, and she was not one of them. She looked too young to be a graduate student anyway. So how did she know how to solve these advanced problems? And what was she doing in his classroom at 3 a.m.? Richard decided he needed to find out more about this mysterious young mathematician. He took a deep breath and gently knocked on the classroom door. The soft knock on the classroom door made Katie Miller jump like she had been hit by lightning. The marker in her hand flew across the room and clattered on the floor. Her heart started beating so fast she thought it might burst out of her chest. Katie spun around quickly, her long blonde hair whipping across her face. Standing in the doorway was a man she had never seen before. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes behind his glasses. He was wearing a dark coat and looked like he belonged at the university. For a moment, Katie could not move or speak. She just stood there with her mouth open, staring at the man. Her face turned bright red with embarrassment. She had been caught doing something she was not supposed to do, and she knew she was in big trouble. "I am so sorry," Katie finally managed to say. Her voice was shaky and quiet. "I know I should not be here. Please do not call security. I will leave right now." Katie started to gather her papers and books as quickly as she could. Her hands were shaking so much that she dropped half of them on the floor. She was trying not to cry, but tears were starting to form in her eyes. The man stepped into the classroom and closed the door behind him. "Wait," he said gently. "Do not leave yet. I am not going to call security." Katie stopped picking up her papers and looked at him with surprise. She had expected him to be angry and tell her to get out, but his voice was calm and kind. "My name is Dr. Richard Hayes," the man said. "I am the director of the mathematics department here at Harvard." "And you are?" Katie's eyes grew even wider. She had heard of Dr. Hayes before. Everyone in the math department knew who he was. He was famous for his research and was one of the most respected professors at Harvard. Katie felt even more embarrassed now. She had been caught by the most important person in the math department. "I am Katie Miller," she said quietly. "I am really sorry, Dr. Hayes. I know I should not be using this classroom without permission. I just needed a quiet place to study, and I thought no one would mind if I came here late at night." Dr. Hayes looked at the whiteboard covered with Katie's equations. "How long have you been coming here?" he asked. Katie looked down at her feet. "About 3 months," she admitted. "I only come very late at night when no one is around. I always clean the board before I leave. I have never broken anything or made a mess." "Why do you come here so late?" Dr. Hayes asked. "Do you not have other places to study?" Katie's face got even redder. She did not want to tell this important professor about her problems, but she felt like she had to be honest since she was already in trouble. "I share a dorm room with 3 other girls," Katie said slowly. "They like to have friends over and play music until very late. It is too noisy for me to concentrate on my math homework. The library closes at midnight, and that is when I get off work from my second job." "Second job?" Dr. Hayes asked with surprise. Katie nodded. I work at a coffee shop in the morning before my classes start. Then I work at a restaurant in the evening after my classes end. I need both jobs to help pay for school and to send some money home to my family. Dr. Hayes felt his heart fill with sympathy for this young woman. He had known many students over the years who worked to pay for school, but working 2 jobs while taking classes was very difficult. "What year are you in college?" he asked. "I'm a sophomore," Katie replied. "This is my 2nd year at Harvard." Dr. Hayes walked closer to the whiteboard to look at Katie's work. The equations were definitely not sophomore-level math. They were advanced problems that even his graduate students found challenging. "Katie," he said, pointing at the board, "can you explain to me how you solved this problem?" Katie looked at the equation he was pointing to. It was one of the harder ones she had worked on that night. "Which part do you want me to explain?" she asked. "Start from the beginning," Dr. Hayes said. "Show me your thought process." Katie walked to the board and picked up a marker. She started explaining her solution step by step. As she talked, Dr. Hayes listened carefully. Her explanation was clear and showed deep understanding of the mathematical concepts involved. "Where did you learn to solve problems like this?" "Doctor," Hayes asked when she finished. Katie looked embarrassed again. "I taught myself," she said quietly. "I have been reading advanced math books since I was in high school. I love solving difficult problems. It makes me feel happy and excited." "But these are graduate-level problems," Dr. Hayes said with amazement. "How did you know about them?" Katie shrugged. "I found some old textbooks at a used bookstore near my hometown. I also use the internet to find problems to solve. Sometimes, I check out advanced books from the library here at Harvard." Dr. Hayes was shocked. This young woman had taught herself mathematics that most people needed years of formal education to understand. She had done it on her own, with no teacher to guide her. "What math classes are you taking now?" he asked. "Calculus 2 and statistics," Katie replied. "I wanted to take harder classes, but the computer system would not let me register for them. It said I needed to take other classes first." Dr. Hayes shook his head in disbelief. Katie was taking basic sophomore math classes while solving problems that challenged PhD students. The university system was holding back someone with incredible natural talent. "Katie," Dr. Hayes said, "I have been teaching mathematics for over 20 years. I have seen many talented students, but what you have shown me tonight is extraordinary. Your ability to understand and solve these problems is remarkable." Katie looked at him with surprise. She had never heard a professor say such nice things about her math skills before. Most of her teachers treated her like any other student. "Do you really think I am good at math?" she asked. "I think you have a gift," Dr. Hayes replied. "A very rare gift that should not be wasted." Katie felt tears starting to form in her eyes again, but this time they were happy tears. For the first time in her life, someone important was telling her that she was truly good at something she loved. "What happens now?" Katie asked. "Are you going to report me for using the classroom without permission?" Dr. Hayes smiled. "No, Katie, I am not going to report you. Instead, I want to help you. I think we need to talk about your future in mathematics." Dr. Hayes pulled out a chair and sat down at one of the student desks. He looked at Katie with gentle eyes and patted the chair next to him. "Please sit down, Katie. I would like to know more about your story." Katie hesitated for a moment. She was still nervous about talking to such an important professor, but his kind voice made her feel a little more comfortable. She sat down in the chair next to him and folded her hands in her lap. "Tell me about your family," Dr. Hayes said softly. "Where are you from?" Katie took a deep breath. She rarely talked about her background because it made her feel different from the other Harvard students. Most of them came from wealthy families and had attended expensive private schools. Her story was very different. "I grew up in a small town called Millfield in Ohio," Katie began. "It has only about 2,000 people. My dad works at a factory that makes car parts. He has worked there for 25 years. My mom cleans houses for rich families in the next town over." Dr. Hayes nodded and listened carefully. He could tell that Katie was not used to sharing personal information with professors. "My parents are wonderful people," Katie continued. "They work very hard every day. My dad leaves for work at 6 in the morning and does not come home until 7 at night. My mom cleans 3 different houses every day, even on weekends sometimes. Do your parents have college degrees? Dr. Hayes asked. Katie shook her head. No, they both finished high school, but they never had the chance to go to college. When they graduated, they needed to start working right away to help their own families. But they always told me that education was the most important thing in life. Katie's eyes became brighter as she talked about her parents. Even though they do not understand mathematics like I do, they always supported my love for numbers. When I was little, I would solve math puzzles for fun while other kids played with toys. My parents thought it was amazing, even though they could not help me with the harder problems. What was school like for you in your hometown? Dr. Hayes asked. Katie's face became sad. It was frustrating, she said honestly. Our high school was very small. We only had basic math classes like algebra and geometry. The highest level was something called pre-calculus, but even that class was not very advanced. So how did you learn calculus and higher mathematics? Dr. Hayes wondered. I taught myself, Katie replied. When I was 15, I realized that I had learned everything my school could teach me about math. So I started going to the public library every day after school. I found old college textbooks and started reading them. Dr. Hayes was amazed. That must have been very difficult without a teacher to explain things. Katie nodded. It was hard at first. Sometimes I would spend weeks trying to understand one concept, but I loved the challenge. When I finally understood something new, it felt like solving the greatest puzzle in the world. Did anyone help you? Dr. Hayes asked. The librarian, Mrs. Johnson, was very kind to me, Katie said with a small smile. She ordered special books for me when I asked. She also helped me get access to online courses and math websites. She said she had never met a teenager who was so excited about mathematics. Katie paused and looked down at her hands. But not everyone was supportive. My guidance counselor at school, Mr. Peterson, told me I was wasting my time. He said girls from small towns like mine should focus on practical things like becoming nurses or teachers. Dr. Hayes felt angry when he heard this. He had seen too many talented students discouraged by people who did not understand their potential. What did Mr. Peterson say when you told him you wanted to apply to Harvard? He asked. Katie laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. He told me I was being foolish. He said Harvard was for rich kids from fancy private schools, not for girls like me. He tried to convince me to apply to the community college in our county instead. But you applied to Harvard anyway, Dr. Hayes said. Yes, Katie replied, but it was not easy. I had to work 3 different jobs during my senior year to save money for application fees and test preparation books. I worked at a grocery store, babysat for neighbors, and helped my mom clean houses on weekends. Dr. Hayes was quiet for a moment, thinking about how hard Katie had worked just for the chance to apply to college. Most students at Harvard had never worried about application fees or test prep costs. I applied to Harvard and 10 other schools. Katie continued. I never thought I would actually get accepted. When the acceptance letter came in the mail, I cried for an hour. My parents cried too. We could not believe it was real. What happened when you arrived at Harvard? Dr. Hayes asked. Katie's expression became sad again. It was harder than I expected. Not the schoolwork. That part was actually easier than I thought it would be. It was everything else. Most of the other students had taken advanced math classes in high school. They talked about concepts I had only read about in books. They seemed so confident and smart. Did you tell anyone about your mathematical abilities? Dr. Hayes wondered. I tried to, Katie said. During my first semester, I went to my calculus professor and told him I thought the class was too easy for me. I showed him some of the advanced problems I could solve, but he just smiled and told me to focus on doing well in the class I was in. Dr. Hayes shook his head. He realized that Katie had been trying to get help for over a year, but no one had taken her seriously. What about your academic advisor? He asked. She looked at my transcript from high school and said I needed to take basic math classes first, Katie replied. She said it was better to build a strong foundation before moving to advanced topics. But I already had the foundation. I just Needed someone to give me a chance. Katie's voice became frustrated. So I have been taking easy math classes for 2 years while working 2 jobs to pay for school. At night, when I finally have free time, I come here to work on the problems that actually challenge me. Dr. Hayes felt his heart break for this young woman. She had incredible talent but had been trapped in a system that did not recognize her abilities. She had been forced to hide her gift and study alone in empty classrooms. "Katie," he said gently, "how do you afford to go to Harvard? It is very expensive." Katie looked embarrassed again. "I got some financial aid, but it does not cover everything. That is why I work 2 jobs. I also send money home to help my parents sometimes. They have been struggling since my dad's factory cut his hours." "Do you ever think about quitting?" Dr. Hayes asked. Katie was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes," she admitted. "When I am very tired from working and studying, I wonder if Mr. Peterson was right. Maybe I do not belong here. Maybe I should have stayed home and gone to community college." "But you have not quit," Dr. Hayes observed. "No," Katie said with determination in her voice, "because I love mathematics more than anything else in the world. Even when everything else is difficult, solving math problems makes me happy. It is the one thing I am truly good at." Dr. Hayes smiled at her. "Katie, you are not just good at mathematics. You are extraordinary. And I am going to make sure that everyone else knows it too." Dr. Hayes looked at Katie with determination in his eyes. "Katie, I want to help you, but first I need to be absolutely sure about your abilities. Would you be willing to meet with me a few times so I can test your mathematical knowledge?" Katie's heart started beating faster with excitement. "You really want to help me?" she asked, hardly believing what she was hearing. "Yes," Dr. Hayes replied firmly. "But I need to do this the right way. If I am going to recommend you for advanced classes, I need to prove to other professors that you are ready. That means I need to document your skills properly." Katie nodded, eagerly. "I will do whatever tests you want me to do." Dr. Hayes pulled out his phone and looked at his calendar. "Can you meet me in my office tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock? I will prepare some problems for you to solve." "I have to work at the restaurant until 4, Katie said sadly. "Could we meet later?" "What time do you finish work?" Dr. Hayes asked. "I usually get done around 10 at night," Katie replied. "But I could ask my boss if I can leave early just this once." Dr. Hayes thought for a moment. "No, do not ask to leave work early. You need that job. Let me think of another solution." He paused and then smiled. "What if we meet here in this classroom tomorrow night at 10:30? That way you can finish work first." Katie could not believe how kind and understanding Dr. Hayes was being. Most professors would never agree to meet a student so late at night. "Are you sure that is okay?" she asked. "Katie, if you have the talent I think you have, then helping you is more important than my sleep schedule," Dr. Hayes said with a smile. The next evening, Katie rushed from her restaurant job to the Jefferson building. She was nervous and excited at the same time. This could be the chance she had been dreaming about for 2 years. Dr. Hayes was already waiting in the classroom when she arrived. He had several sheets of paper on the desk and had written some problems on the whiteboard. "Are you ready?" he asked when Katie walked in. "I think so," Katie replied, though her hands were shaking a little from nervousness. For the next 2 hours, Dr. Hayes gave Katie increasingly difficult math problems to solve. He started with advanced calculus problems that third-year students typically struggled with. Katie solved them quickly and correctly. Then he moved to differential equations that were taught in graduate-level courses. Again, Katie worked through them with confidence and skill. Finally, Dr. Hayes presented her with a topology problem that even some of his PhD students found challenging. Katie stared at the problem for several minutes, thinking deeply. Then she began working on the solution, step by step. Dr. Hayes watched in amazement as Katie solved the problem using a method he had never seen before. Her approach was creative and elegant. When she finished, he checked her work carefully. It was completely correct. "Katie," Dr. Hayes said slowly, "in 20 years of teaching, I have never seen anyone solve that problem so quickly or so creatively." Katie's face lit up with joy. Really? I did okay? You did more than okay, Dr. Hayes replied. You solved graduate-level problems that many of my PhD students cannot handle. Your mathematical intuition is remarkable. Over the next week, Dr. Hayes met with Katie 3 more times. Each time, he gave her different types of advanced problems. Katie consistently performed at a level that amazed him. She was not just memorizing solutions. She truly understood the deep mathematical concepts involved. After the 4th meeting, Dr. Hayes knew what he had to do, but it would be risky for his career. The next morning, Dr. Hayes walked into the office of Dr. Patricia Wilson, the Dean of Academic Affairs. Dr. Wilson was known for being very strict about academic rules and procedures. Richard, Dr. Wilson said when he entered her office, what can I do for you? Patricia, I need to discuss an unusual situation with you, Dr. Hayes began. I have discovered a student with extraordinary mathematical ability, but she has been placed in classes that are far below her skill level. Dr. Wilson looked interested. Tell me more. Dr. Hayes explained how he had found Katie working on advanced problems at 3 in the morning. He described the tests he had given her and showed Dr. Wilson copies of Katie's work. This is impressive, Dr. Wilson admitted as she looked at the papers. But Richard, you know we have prerequisites for advanced courses for good reasons. Students need to build their knowledge step by step. I understand that, Dr. Hayes replied. But in this case, the student has already built that knowledge on her own. She is more prepared for graduate-level work than many of our graduate students. Dr. Wilson frowned. What exactly are you asking me to do? Dr. Hayes took a deep breath. I want permission to allow this student to audit my graduate topology seminar. If she can handle the work, then we should consider allowing her to enroll in advanced courses despite her lack of formal prerequisites. Dr. Wilson was quiet for a long moment. Richard, this is very unusual. If word gets out that we are allowing students to skip prerequisites, it could cause problems with other students and faculty. I am willing to take full responsibility, Dr. Hayes said. If this does not work out, you can blame me entirely. What is the student's name? Dr. Wilson asked. Katie Miller. She is a sophomore. Dr. Wilson looked up Katie's academic record on her computer. Her grades are excellent, but she is only taking intermediate-level courses. How do you know she can handle graduate work? Dr. Hayes pulled out his phone and showed Dr. Wilson a video he had recorded of Katie solving a complex problem on the whiteboard. Watch this, he said. Dr. Wilson watched the video with growing amazement. She could see that Katie was not just getting the right answer. She was demonstrating deep understanding of advanced mathematical concepts. This is remarkable, Dr. Wilson said when the video ended. But Richard, what if she fails? What if the other graduate students complain? What if parents find out we are bending rules? Patricia, Dr. Hayes said earnestly, what if we do nothing? What if we let this incredible talent go to waste because we are afraid to take a risk? Katie has been teaching herself advanced mathematics for years. She deserves a chance to learn at her actual level. Dr. Wilson was quiet for several minutes thinking about the situation. Finally, she looked at Dr. Hayes. I will make you a deal. You can allow this student to audit your seminar for 1 month. If she proves she can handle the work and does not disrupt the class, then we will consider allowing her to enroll in advanced courses. Dr. Hayes felt relief wash over him. Thank you, Patricia. I promise you will not regret this decision. I hope not, Dr. Wilson replied, because if this goes badly, both of our reputations will suffer. That evening, Dr. Hayes called Katie and asked her to meet him at the coffee shop where she worked in the morning. When Katie saw Dr. Hayes walk into the coffee shop the next day, she was surprised. She was working behind the counter, making drinks. For customers, Dr. Hayes, she said with confusion. What are you doing here? I have some news for you, he said with a big smile. Can you take a break for a few minutes? Katie asked her manager if she could take a quick break. They sat at a small table in the corner of the coffee shop. Katie, Dr. Hayes said, I spoke with the Dean of Academic Affairs yesterday. She has agreed to let you audit my graduate topology seminar. Katie's eyes grew wide with shock. Are you serious? Completely serious, Dr. Hayes replied. The class meets on Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 7 to 9. You will be the only undergraduate in the room. Are you ready for that challenge? Katie felt tears of joy forming in her eyes. Dr. Hayes, I cannot believe this is happening. Thank you so much for believing in me. Do not thank me yet, Dr. Hayes said with a gentle smile. This is just the beginning. Now you have to prove that you belong in that classroom. Katie's first day in the graduate topology seminar was the most nervous she had ever felt in her life. She arrived at the classroom 15 minutes early and sat in the back row, hoping no one would notice her. Her hands were shaking as she arranged her notebook and pencils on the desk. The graduate students began filing into the classroom one by one. They all looked confident and sophisticated. Katie heard them talking about research projects and conferences she had never heard of. She felt like she did not belong there. A tall man with dark hair sat down next to her. I have never seen you before, he said. Are you new to the program? Katie's face turned red. I am not actually in the graduate program, she said quietly. I am just auditing this class. The man looked confused. But this is an advanced seminar. You need to have taken several prerequisite courses to be here. Before Katie could answer, Dr. Hayes walked into the classroom. Good evening, everyone, he said. Before we begin, I want to introduce a special auditor to our class. This is Katie Miller, and she is here because she has demonstrated exceptional ability in advanced mathematics. All the graduate students turned to look at Katie. She wanted to hide under her desk. Some of them looked curious, while others seemed skeptical. A young woman with short black hair raised her hand. Dr. Hayes, how can an undergraduate student be ready for graduate topology? This seminar is supposed to be for advanced PhD students. Dr. Hayes smiled. That is an excellent question, Jennifer. Rather than explain, why do not we let Katie show us what she can do? Katie, would you mind coming to the board and solving this problem? Dr. Hayes wrote a complex topology problem on the whiteboard. Katie looked at it and felt her stomach drop. It was harder than anything she had worked on before. All the graduate students were staring at her, waiting to see if she would fail. Katie took a deep breath and walked to the front of the classroom. She studied the problem for several minutes while everyone watched in silence. Then she picked up a marker and began working. At first, her hand shook as she wrote the first few lines. But as she got deeper into the problem, she began to feel more confident. The mathematics started to make sense to her, and she found a path to the solution. For 20 minutes, Katie worked on the problem while the entire class watched. She could hear some of the students whispering to each other, but she tried to ignore them and focus on the mathematics. When Katie finished, she stepped back from the board. Her solution filled almost the entire whiteboard. She turned to face the class, her heart pounding. Dr. Hayes examined her work carefully. Then he smiled broadly. Excellent work, Katie. Your solution is not only correct, but you used a very creative approach that I have never seen before. The graduate students looked amazed. Jennifer, who had questioned Katie's presence earlier, raised her hand again. That was incredible, she said. I have been struggling with problems like that for months. Over the next few weeks, Katie proved herself again and again in the seminar. She contributed thoughtful ideas to class discussions and solved difficult problems that challenged even the most advanced students. The graduate students stopped questioning her presence and began asking for her help with their own work. Word about Katie's abilities began to spread throughout the mathematics department. Other professors started dropping by Dr. Hayes' seminar to see the remarkable undergraduate student they had heard about. Dr. Margaret Chen, a professor who specialized in advanced algebra, visited the class one evening. After watching Katie solve a particularly difficult problem, she approached Dr. Hayes after class. Richard, she said, I have been teaching here for 15 years, and I have never seen anything like what that young woman just did. Where did she come from? Dr. Hayes told Dr. Chen about Katie's background and how he had discovered her working alone in the classroom. Dr. Chen was amazed by the story. We need to do something special for this student, Dr. Chen said. She should not be wasting her time in undergraduate courses. The next week, Dr. Hayes received a call from Dr. Wilson. the Dean of Academic Affairs. "Richard," she said, "I have been hearing remarkable things about your student Katie Miller. Other faculty members are talking about her." "She has exceeded every expectation," Dr. Hayes replied. "She is performing better than most of our PhD students." "I think it is time we made this official," Dr. Wilson said. "I want to offer Katie a full scholarship and a research position in the department. She can graduate early and go directly into our PhD program." Dr. Hayes felt overwhelming joy. "Patricia, that would change her entire life." "She has earned it," Dr. Wilson replied. "But there is one condition. I want her to give a presentation to the entire mathematics faculty. If she can impress them the way she has impressed you, then we will make the offer official." 2 weeks later, Katie stood in front of 30 professors and graduate students in the main lecture hall. She was more nervous than she had ever been in her life, but she was also excited. Dr. Hayes had helped her prepare a presentation about a mathematical problem she had been working on independently. Katie began her presentation by explaining a famous unsolved problem in topology. Then she showed the audience her approach to solving it. Her method was completely original and demonstrated deep insight into advanced mathematical concepts. As Katie spoke, the audience became more and more engaged. Professors who had been skeptical at first began nodding their heads in appreciation. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Dr. Wilson stood up. "Katie," she said, "on behalf of Harvard University, I am pleased to offer you a full scholarship for the remainder of your undergraduate studies and a guaranteed position in our PhD program. We are also offering you a research assistantship that will allow you to quit your part-time jobs and focus entirely on your studies." Katie felt tears streaming down her face. She could hardly believe what was happening. "Thank you," she said through her tears. "Thank you so much." 3 years later, Katie graduated summa cum laude with a degree in mathematics. She completed her PhD in record time under Dr. Hayes' guidance. Her dissertation solved several important problems in topology and was published in the most prestigious mathematics journal in the world. Dr. Hayes attended Katie's PhD graduation ceremony with tremendous pride. During her speech, Katie thanked him for believing in her when no one else would. "Dr. Hayes saw something in me that I did not even see in myself," she said to the audience. "He took a risk on a girl from a small town in Ohio, and that risk changed my life forever." After graduation, Katie was offered positions at several top universities. She chose to become a professor at a state university where she could work with students from backgrounds similar to her own. Katie started a special program to identify and support mathematically gifted students from underprivileged families. She wanted to make sure that other young people with hidden talents would get the chances she had been given. 10 years after that night when Dr. Hayes first found her in the classroom, Dr. Katie Miller returned to Harvard as a visiting professor. On her first evening back, she walked through the Jefferson Building and stopped at classroom 204. The room was dark and empty, just like it had been that night long ago. Katie smiled as she remembered the scared young woman who used to sneak in here to work on math problems alone. As she was about to leave, Katie heard a sound coming from another classroom down the hall. She walked toward the sound and saw light coming from under a door. Through the window, she could see a young man working on advanced equations on the whiteboard. Katie gently knocked on the door, just as Dr. Hayes had done for her all those years ago. When the young man looked up with surprise and fear, Katie smiled kindly. "Do not worry," she said. "I am not going to get you in trouble. My name is Professor Miller, and I think we need to talk."